Okay, I feel like this stereo that I have and have had for 38 years has been incredibly absorbing for me, particularly over the past month or so, since I've been contemplating giving it to Sailor. And I have given it to Sailor, but I wanted to fix it up a little bit before I gave it to him. Unfortunately, this is a long story because I've had a number of problems with the stereo, including noisy switches and the like. And I have relied on a couple of things that I'm aware of to clean up the switches. These two things, deoxit D5 and deoxit fader. So what happens, and then what I've discovered a long time ago, is that if you have noisy switches in a radio, you can spray this stuff into them, and the fader works a little more for rheostatic sliders more than a switch per se, and it cleans up the switch. So if you have a radio that crackles sort of when you increase or decrease the volume, or a switch that's a little noisy when you distort it, like the sound becomes distorted when you're toggling it, then you can spray that stuff in and it kind of cleans up the contacts. It's much better than contact cleaner because contact cleaner normally doesn't clean up those noisy contacts, particularly if it requires the fader. F5, fader F5. Okay, so today I was messing around with this thing one last time and I had some problems with some switches, so I wanted to clean up the switches. So I took the thing apart and I blew it out with an air compressor and I changed the cord over so that it's a US plug receptacle, so it fits in that switch right there because it had a European plug on it before, and that's just inconvenient these days. You need the converter for it all the time, or the adapter. Okay, so I took it apart and I'm going to give this to Sailor. He's leaving with it tomorrow and I wanted to get it fixed up, so I couldn't get this music to play without some noise in it, so I'm going to turn it on now and it's going to play. So I have a couple of speakers, and this may not sound good through the system I have right now with the cell phone and all that, but where I'm taping it. But I can assure you that I'm completely, as I explored this a little deeper, I was completely befuddled. So I was trying to clean up switches, and what I do, so there's a switch right here for input selector. Oops, not for recording selector. Here's an input selector. Here's a switch for the input from the phono, and you can select phono 1 or phono 2, and then there's phono 1 allows a moving magnet or a moving coil at different input rates levels. Here's a volume control rheostat right here. And then I go back here, and up here, well, one of these is the input selector and the other one is the recording selector of these sliders here. So there's actually a cable hooked up to the switch, and when you rotate the switch, it moves the slider physically back in this location right here. So then I looked more and more, and I've been kind of confused about this for a while because when I cleaned this up probably 5-10 years ago, I noticed that there really didn't seem to be a solid way to clean up the contact for the phono switch, which is right here. So it actually doesn't seem to do anything. So I kept cleaning on it down in this region here. There's a little switch right down here, so I kept cleaning it. Well, it's kind of lower than that, but a little black switch down there. It's not this white part, but the black part. Maybe if I get on this side, you can kind of see it. Oh, I can put light on it too, and that might help. So that black part with the little steel connectors on it, it's not a disc, but it's kind of an odd long. It's right on the surface of the circuit board there, right at the center. Anyway, that switch looks a lot like these other switches right here. And this is the input. This is the recording selector, and this is the input selector right here. And these are the cables that actually physically move the switch. Well, this switch is exactly the same, except it doesn't have a cable on it. And I thought, well, that's weird. But I always did notice that there's this box and that box, and then there's another box right down here, right there. And so I thought it was a little weird, and I've actually sprayed cleaner in there because I thought, well, maybe it moves that switch a little differently. But in all the spraying that I did on all these switches today, including a dB muter here, like a muting switch, the volume switch, these other switches, I still was getting this distortion in the phono playing. So after looking at it more and more, I looked at this switch and I said, gee, I wonder if there's a way that I can move that switch. Well, that little white knob on the front of the switch, which is right, I'm trying not to short something out because that would really suck if I blew this thing up, but I'm trying to get this tip in there. So there's a little knob right here, and I actually moved that knob and I sprayed cleaner in there, and it fixed the whole thing. And I'm just mind boggled about it, and I can actually turn it up, and I'm gonna just make it a little weird because so if I move that switch, it disconnects. It's gonna disconnect the phono because I just changed it to phono 2, and there's nothing plugged into phono 2. And if I put it back on phono 1, it plays, but there's multiple settings for phono 1, so if I go through those, it sounds a little weird because it's not getting the right millivolt signal from the thing. So anyway, I'm putting it back where it belongs, which is for the phono that I have. Carefully without shorting something out. Geez, what am I doing here? Can't get on. I may have to tweak this a little bit. It may not be in the right place, but I'm going to turn the volume down just so you can hear me. So anyway, I'm looking at this whole arrangement going, this thing doesn't work. And I've had it for 38 years, and I'm thinking back in my brain trying to figure out if it was somehow possible that I overheated this thing when I was like 21 years old, 38 years ago, and had a warranty repair on it because I blew it up, and then they told me that it overheated, and the guy at the store like verbally accosted me for the way I set it up or something like that, but I never thought it would overheat. And I used to put my turntable right on top of this thing, but then I kind of spaced it out a little more so that it would have more air going through it, and now I actually put a fan on top of the box so that it would constantly circulate air through it. And anyway, I'm trying to remember and can't remember if I actually sent it in for that warranty repair or not. But if I did, and they took the thing apart and fixed it by replacing a board or something like that, they broke that switch and didn't fix it. Because it's just, this switch right here does nothing except change the color of that light on the front. And the switch back here, underneath there, will change it to phono 2 because I even unplugged the jack, plugged it into phono 2, and it worked just fine. So I just cannot, I'm just mind boggled. Yeah. Anyway, I'm going to have to stop now because I can't, I'm thinking about it, but anyway, I'm going into this time warp where I'm trying to remember something that I don't clearly remember because I don't remember sending it in for a warranty repair. And I do remember something about overheating, but can't remember the rest of the story or how it even got resolved. And I'm sure if I overheated it probably blew up and then I had to get it fixed. So, but then for them to take it in and fix it and break the switch somehow and not fix it, like, what did they say? Oh, he doesn't need that. Or were they just trying to cover up something that they screwed up and just thinking that if they just left it, then I wouldn't notice, and then, you know, years would go by and they didn't have to fix it. So anyway, it's bizarre, but I'm going to leave it there. So it works now. And I think once I cleaned up that switch, it cleaned up a lot of things, noise in those switches that I've been dealing with for 25 years, because back in the mid-90s I tried to digitize albums and I was having trouble getting clean sound all the time, so I was flipping the switch back and forth to find a clean spot on it and that kind of thing. Anyway, it works great now. I hope it works for another 20 years, and if Sailor ever has to change the switch, that's the way to change it. Take the cover off, manipulate the switch, and then you can hook up any turntable you want to the inputs. So, because it has lots of selections. Anyway, that's all I got. Enjoy.